In the headlines this evening, the commander of U.S. Forces Korea stresses the need for missile defense capability in South Korea. That issue is expected to be discussed at an upcoming round of talks between South Korea, China, and Japan. The government plans to inject $9 billion in 2015 to spur economic recovery, in addition to what was already set aside for the year. And Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says the pace of the U.S. Fed's rate hike is more important than the timing. Stay tuned for these stories and more coming right up. It's 6 in the evening on Friday, March 20th here in Seoul. You're watching Early Edition at 6. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. We begin with another hint that the U.S. might be mulling over deploying its missile defense system called THAAD to South Korea.
The top U.S. military general in South Korea told the defense officials in Washington that South Korea and the U.S. need to have a layered ballistic missile defense capability in the South.
Our Kim Hyun-bin starts us off.
The commander of U.S. Forces Korea is calling on Seoul and Washington to implement a layered ballistic missile defense capability, and another strong signal that the U.S. is keen to deploy the THAAD system to the Korean peninsula. In a written testimony to the U.S. House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense on Thursday, General Curtis Scaparrotti stressed the need for a ballistic missile defense capability in South Korea due to the threat posed by North Korea. On the same day, an official from the U.S. Defense Department said Washington is prepared to hold official talks with Seoul about the possible deployment of THAAD, as there have been no formal consultations thus far. The ongoing speculation about the possible deployment of THAAD to South Korea has stirred controversy inside and outside of Korea. China and Russia are deeply opposed to THAAD being on their regional doorstep, saying it would infringe upon their national security. On the other hand, its supporters say THAAD will counter North Korea's increasing ballistic and missile threats. The U.S. also believes the threat posed by North Korea has become even more acute. Scaparrotti says that Pyongyang has the ability to produce a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can be mounted on top of a ballistic missile. North Korea has conducted 3 nuclear bomb tests, the first in 2006, the second in 2009, and the most recent coming in February 2013. Experts predict the potential fourth testing will be to test a miniaturized warhead. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
So if the U.S. decides to deploy its THAAD missile defense system in South Korea, Seoul may have to shoulder some of the cost.
Right. The local daily Munhwa-ilbo reported it would cost roughly $1.8 billion in order to fully equip the THAAD battery. But the U.S. military would absorb at least half of that cost.
Well, at this point, it's all speculation and assumptions when it comes to that deployment. And this is a big if South Korea decides to adopt the system, the report says Washington may try to pressure Seoul to share a big portion of the cost since the U.S. is going through budget cuts. Now, foreign ministers from Korea, China, and Japan will gather in Seoul tomorrow for their first trilateral meeting in nearly 3 years.
Now, while the agenda for the talks is strictly focused on reviving trilateral cooperation, some say it could be an opportunity for Beijing to once again voice its concern over the possible deployment of THAAD to Korea.
For this report, here's Hwang Sung-hee.
When the top diplomats from Korea, China, and Japan meet on Saturday, they'll discuss ways to restore trilateral cooperation amid strained relations. Tangled in territorial and historical disputes, the talks in Seoul are the first such meeting since 2012. Korea, as the current rotating chair, has been pushing for a gathering of the top diplomats since late last year. But Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi may have another agenda in mind.
Since the visit to Korea by Chinese Defense Minister Chung Won-chun, China has been very vocal about its position on THAAD. It is highly likely that the issue will be brought up again.
Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will hold separate meetings with the visiting diplomats ahead of the trilateral talks, giving the Chinese minister an opportunity to reiterate Beijing's concerns. On Monday, a senior Chinese diplomat called on Korea to consider Beijing's concerns before deploying the U.S. missile defense system. Seoul says its decision will be based on national interest. There are also questions about whether Korea and Japan will make progress on the issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women, especially since this is Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida's first trip to Seoul since taking office in 2012. The visiting ministers are also scheduled to meet with President Park Geun-hye ahead of the trilateral meeting. While Seoul and Tokyo have expressed hopes that Saturday's talks will lead to a trilateral summit, experts say that Beijing will likely remain cautious and make sure that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe apologizes for Japan's wartime atrocities before setting a date. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has come out with an optimistic response to Pyongyang's unilateral wage hike for North Korean workers at the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the government is willing to raise wages within the 5% range as stipulated in labor regulations for the complex. Last month, the North Korean regime unilaterally decided to hike the wages to $74 per month and also revise regulations at the factory zone. Today's response from Seoul comes after a group of South Korean businessmen traveled to Kaesong for wage talks with North Korean officials this week. The chairman of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee pledged his commitment to, quote, getting the historical record correct regarding Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women. In a statement, Representative Ed Royce says he told a group of visiting South Korean lawmakers about his trip to a memorial set up in Glendale, Los Angeles to honor the so-called comfort women. The statement also mentioned that the Korean lawmakers told Royce that it is not appropriate for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to address the U.S. Congress without sincerely apologizing for Tokyo's wartime atrocities. On this, Royce said nothing has been decided yet. The Japanese leader is set to visit Washington next month amid mounting calls by the international community to sincerely apologize.
Back here in Indonesia, the bodies from a fatal helicopter crash last week have been found. The chopper is believed to have crashed into the sea because of bad weather conditions and low visibility, but the exact cause is still under investigation. Our Connie Kim has the latest.
The bodies of the two missing pilots from last week's helicopter crash have been found in waters off Korea's southwestern coast. The Coast Guard confirmed on Friday that the bodies are those of the captains of the ill-fated chopper. The Coast Guard helicopter carrying 4 people crashed in waters off Kagodo Island last Friday while trying to land near a seawall. 1 person is still missing. The helicopter was on a mission to transport an emergency patient to an inland hospital. This is the same helicopter that was the first to arrive at the Seoul ferry accident last April, saving 12 people. Korea's Coast Guard and Navy were immediately dispatched to the site, but strong waves and heavy fog have been hampering rescue operations for days. Due to the unfavorable weather conditions, it took rescue teams 6 days to find the fuselage using an underwater camera. Salvage teams recovered the fuselage roughly a kilometer from the port. However, it's making it difficult for officials to find out what happened in the moments before the accident because the helicopter didn't have a black box. Authorities say the pilots may have been caught out by a lack of visibility amid foggy conditions. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Outside of Korea, the Islamic State group claims it was behind the massacre at Tunisia's National Museum. But there are skeptics. Some security analysts in the region wonder if the group is taking credit for the work of a sympathizer. Our Kwon So-hwa has more on the progress of the investigations.
The first drop of rain is how the Islamic State extremist group described Wednesday's attack on a museum in Tunisia. Claiming responsibility in an audio recording posted on Twitter, the terror group praised the 2 attackers killed in the mission, calling them Knights of the Islamic State. The group, however, offered no proof that it was behind the attack. In their ongoing investigations, police have made 9 arrests. 4 suspects are said to be directly linked to the gunmen. The remaining 5 are alleged to be part of a terrorist cell. Officials say the terrorists chose Bardo Museum as its proud symbol of Tunisia's historical identity.
They chose Bardo Museum, and this is not a coincidence. Bardo Museum is a place of memory, and they hate these memories. Bardo Museum is a place for history, and they hate history.
The overall death toll rose to 25 on Thursday, including 20 foreign tourists from several nations, a police officer, and the 2 gunmen who were shot dead by security forces. Nearly 50 others were hurt. But Tunisia's security services have been praised for their quick response as the gunmen had explosives which they failed to detonate.
Surveillance will be intensified on all tourist zones in the country to avoid any other incidents like the one yesterday. It will involve all the national territory.
The attack is the deadliest to have hit Tunisia in more than a decade. The country is concerned about the impact this attack could have on its young democracy and its tourism industry, of which its economy is heavily dependent. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Let's shift gears now to a different story. We hear many success stories of female leaders breaking the glass ceiling and making some positive loud noise. But even in this day and age, we hear some other loud noises, the issue of gender discrimination. Our Kim Min-ji had a chance to sit down with one leadership expert. Her name is Claudia Chang. Take a look.
Women worldwide are making strides to break down walls and create social equality, change, and a more positive environment for women. Claudia Chang, the CEO of She Global Media, a media and education company, is one of them. She's in Seoul to share her insights and empower young women so they too can make change.
Well, there's absolutely a women's revolution happening right now across the world, I believe. I've seen an unprecedented amount of organizations and activists and businesses who have been speaking up for women's rights. Being a woman is incredible, and also it brings a diversity to society. I think feminine traits are incredible qualities of collaboration and communication and empathy and vulnerability that the world needs right now.
So what improvements are needed, to foster an environment, to foster more female leaders?
It can't just be women fighting for women. We need to have the private sector. They need to create programs to get more women into higher level positions. Media is a huge vehicle as well because you have a microphone that speaks to so many women, and to share stories like this, just to create consciousness. Media creates consciousness, and consciousness is what leads to change.
So a recent report by the World Economic Forum showed that Korea ranks 117th out of 142 countries when it comes to gender inequality. So what are some of the things that Korea needs to do in order to reduce this discrepancy and foster more women leaders?
We need more initiatives to help young women coming out of college get jobs, because it's very, very difficult, more difficult for a young woman to get a job than it is for a man. That's one, so institutionalizing career programs, sponsorship programs, internship programs at universities, at corporations. That seems like a very important initiative. Number 2 is, women are not having children. There's a huge fertility issue here in Korea, and of course, then that's not good for society, and it's not good for women. So there needs to be a lot of programs and initiatives around that as well.
Do you have any advice for aspiring young women?
The number one glass ceiling to break before any of it is really the one in your mind. Having that confidence, inner confidence, is really important, and changing the voice in your mind instead of being critical, constantly critical of yourself. We need to be more loving and kind to ourselves so that our voice is giving us the confidence to go out there to do whatever it is that we want to do, to dream big and to defy the odds.
Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
The government plans to spend an extra 10 trillion won or $9 billion to prop up the sluggish economy. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan says 3 trillion won or roughly $2.7 billion will be spent in the first half of this year, with the remainder in the latter half. Now, with the central bank's recent rate cut, Choy explained that it seemed fit to inject money into the economy at this point. He said it was necessary to boost public investment and low consumption. Choy also said the economy is showing signs of improvement, but the government needed to do more than the previous plan to spend about $5 billion in the first half. Following the U.S. Federal Reserve's monetary meeting this week, the Bank of Korea chief says external economic uncertainties may have grown, but he adds because the Fed seems to be planning on raising the rate gradually, the spillover effects may be limited. Shin Se-min has more.
Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says that the pace of the rate increase by the U.S. Federal Reserve is more crucial than when it starts. During a meeting with local commercial bankers on Friday, the governor said that although the timing of the rate hike is important, he said more attention will be on the pace of the increase, as it will continue to rise once it starts. The top central banker's comment follows the Fed's latest indication that it's open to a possible interest rate rise on the back of improving jobs growth, moving it a step closer to increasing the rate for the first time in 9 years. Regarding this, the central banker said economic uncertainty in Korea still exists, adding that it is difficult to predict when the Fed will begin to raise its rates. The BOK last week cut the country's interest rate to a historic low of 1.75% to help boost the sluggish Korean economy. Some experts in Korea believe the country will maintain its key expansionary policy for now because tightening moves like a rate increase by the Fed also indicate possible changes in the global financial market. A U.S. rate hike could trigger a major capital outflow from Korea, as investment already made in developing economies could flow into the U.S. market, eventually forcing the BOK to raise the rate. Experts here say that major economies like Europe and Japan, with their continued monetary easing measures, should work as a buffer for the Korean economy, even if a sizable amount of money makes its way to the U.S. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And over to the tech realm, market watchers expect Samsung Electronics to sell over 50 million units of its latest Galaxy S-series smartphones this year. Global market analysis provider DRAM Exchange says it has raised its 2015 sales outlook for the Galaxy S6 and S6 Edge by 20% from its earlier forecast. It expects Samsung to sell 22 million Galaxy S6 units in the second quarter of the year. That's 5 million more than its previous estimate. It also projects quarterly sales to well exceed 10 million in each of the final 2 quarters of the year. Samsung debuted its Galaxy S6 series at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona early this month with ambitions to regain its lead in the global smartphone market over rival Apple. Unfortunately for Samsung, they still have some catching up to do. Apple took the #1 ranking in the Asian smartphone market in the fourth quarter of 2014. Apple's market share in Asia was 16%, 3% higher than Samsung, according to technology market research organization Counterpoint. Korea, Japan, and China led demand for Apple's flagship iPhone 6 and 6 Plus models. Third and fourth place rankings went to Chinese smartphones Xiaomi and Huawei. Apple's market share took the lead in North America as well, but regions like South America, the Middle East, and Africa showed a stronger preference towards Samsung. According to experts, Samsung has the edge in price competitiveness over Apple in emerging markets.
Now, in these times of slowing growth and low inflation, some businesses in developed countries are raising salaries. Now, that could boost consumption and lead growth, but will Seoul follow suit? Our Song Ji-sun reports.
Korea's minimum wage stands at just below $5 per hour. That translates to a monthly income of only about $1,000, far below the salary needed to meet the minimum cost of living for a family of 4 at $1,500. In the Eurozone, Germany and the UK have moved to raise their minimum wage this year, and the minimum wage in many European countries is already double that of Seoul. In the US and Japan, large companies are raising salaries to stimulate consumption. Last month, Walmart announced that it will raise its hourly pay to $9 per hour, and Japanese automakers like Nissan, Toyota, and Honda have raised their base monthly salaries by $30 to $40, following a pickup in sales from the weekend. But that trend hasn't reached Seoul yet. Samsung Electronics, for example, has frozen salaries after a disappointing performance last year. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan is calling on business leaders to raise salaries, but they claim wage hikes would weaken their price competitiveness, as many Korean companies rely heavily on exports. Experts suggest a wage hike could benefit the labor market, along with improved domestic sentiment.
A wage hike could help boost salaries at the bottom of the bracket and could also encourage job creation. There should be room for drawing the extra funds from the cash reserves many conglomerates have accumulated so far.
Although the government has scaled back, saying wage negotiation is a matter to be discussed between management and labor, a stronger push is needed from the government to convince large companies to initiate the move. 송지선, Arirang News.
As with most tech gadgets, surveillance cameras are becoming smarter and smarter. They used to just simply record what's happening, but now some of them can prevent accidents and even catch intruders. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this story.
An employee starts to walk around with no safety mask or safety gear on. The potentially hazardous situation is detected by a state-of-the-art camera and instantly relayed to a safety administrator. This Smart Video Management System, or SVMS, developed by Samsung S1, has the ability to preemptively detect dangerous situations.
We film a site for a month and find a pattern to determine unsafe conditions based on the camera's 14 algorithms. There are 6 more categories for various industries. The system can detect and send warning signs to the administrators, allowing a swift response.
The SVMS uses a facial recognition program for intruders or to locate a particular person in a designated area. By calculating the speed and angle of movements, the system can detect violent acts or someone has lost consciousness. It can also figure out if barrels containing hazardous material are in danger of tipping over by calculating their angle. This system changes the dynamics of CCTVs, merely used for recording stuff that has already happened. It's also a major improvement as it cuts down on human error. Previously, an administrator had to monitor multiple screens at all times, and the success rate of detecting an accident drops by around half if a person monitors multiple screens for more than 10 minutes. The rate drops even more drastically after just 20 minutes. Due to this, the government is investing $6.3 million over the next 5 years on these smart surveillance systems. And to address concerns about privacy, security companies have come up with features to protect identities of those caught on camera. Samsung S1 blurs the faces when they're filming and reveals them only when they're legally required to do so. There are an estimated 2.7 million CCTV cameras currently installed in Korea, including those managed by government agencies and those owned by individuals. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Well, here in Korea it was sunny and warm, but we would have enjoyed it more if we didn't have to wear masks and arm ourselves.
Right, because of the fine dust particles, right? Let's see if we can look forward to a dust-free weekend by turning to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. Due to the dust particles blowing in from the west side of the peninsula, air conditions have been poor all day today, especially here in Seoul and the surrounding regions. However, the region levels are slowly getting better in the southern regions and will come down to normal by this evening. Now, clouds are expected to come and go throughout the rest of the day due to the influence of high-pressure front on the edge of the east coast. Now, tomorrow is going to be another sunny day with the temperatures ranging between 12 to 23 degrees Celsius. However, cold air is also expected to swiftly bring down the mercury on Sunday and leading us into a freezing morning on Monday. Now, with that in mind, let's have a look at the readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Saturday morning at 6 degrees and gets up to 19 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will top to 23 and 19 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju gets up to 17, Dokdo hits down to 12 degrees, while Bangkok will be sunny at 7 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for that, Michelle. We've come to the end of another week. Thank you for watching. Have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you again next week. Goodbye for now.